right, so it is 8:30 here on the East Coast, and I'm going ahead and get our call started on time. Everybody is on mute, but when it comes for time for question and answer, I will unmute you and let you know how to be unmuted. My name is Waboy, and I am a Citizen Empowerment Coordinator here at American Promise. My coworker, Azer Cole, would have joined us tonight, but he is starting an APA in Long Valley, New Jersey. So a big thank you to all of you tuning into this call right now. And maybe you're tuning into this call right now or listening to the recording afterwards. Either way, you're stepping up to save our democracy, so thank you. The purpose of this call is to inspire you about the work of getting big money out of politics, and to inspire you to come to the National Citizen Leadership Conference and Lobby Day, June 22nd to the 25th in Washington, D.C., and continue the process for an impactful Lobby Day. And you can go to the NCLC website, which is citizenleaders.us, to learn more about the conference and to register. That's www.citizenleaders.us. This is the third in a series of calls geared to having us have the most dynamic and exciting Lobby Day possible. Each call will build off the last, and we're going to have a really great call tonight. I'll repeat this later in the call, but if you already have the Lobby Day meeting scheduled and haven't let us know about it yet, please let me know. Send me the time, location, and the member of Congress, or if it's an aide you're meeting with, the aide's name and the name of the member of Congress they work for. Send that to me by email, and I will loop folks in as appropriate. My email is wambug@americanpromise.net. That's wambug@americanpromise.net. And if you're not in an APA but you want to set up a meeting with your representative or senator on Lobby Day, write me first and let me know which meeting you would like to set up, and I'll let you know if somebody is already setting up that meeting, or if you can be the liaison, and I'll go ahead and set it up. So last month we heard from Florida Congressman Ted Deutsch's scheduler, Alex Rocha, who gave us an insider's look into how to effectively schedule congressional meetings. On this call, we're joined by Jay Butera, who is a senior congressional liaison for the Citizens Climate Lobby and a fierce advocate for clean energy and climate change solutions. And after we hear from Jay, we'll open it up for some questions and answers. And after that, Sam Daly Harris, who was featured on the last May Citizen Leadership Conference call, will lead us through a training about the components of a congressional meeting. And if you don't have the Lobby Day training document, you can actually go online now and be prepared to do that during Sam's section if you go to the citizenleaders.us website. But first, I want to start with this. As you'll learn from the upcoming conversation with Jay Butera, who is pivotal in the creation of the House Climate Solutions Caucus, which as of last week has 39 Republicans and 39 Democrats on it. And Jay's going to discuss how exactly this happened. So before I introduce Jay, I want to start with this from Citizens Climate Lobby, where a volunteer talks about what it was like working with his Republican member of Congress. And this is the quote. Tom Moyer, a CCL volunteer who works with Representative Mia Love, a Republican from Utah, said it's impossible to convince anyone of anything if you fundamentally do not like them. If you walk in thinking they're an idiot and evil, you're done from the start. It doesn't matter how logical your position is, he said. You have to put yourself in a place where you can find something to respect. And I love this part. If you walk in thinking they're an idiot and evil, you're done from the start. It doesn't matter how logical your position is, he said. You have to put yourself in a place where you can find something to respect. And that's part of what we want to get out of this conversation with Jay tonight. Who do we have to be in order to get the 39, then the 49, then the 59, then the 109 Republicans on our legislation to overturn Citizens United? And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Jay. I'm so excited to learn from this expert and learn effectively how to win the hearts and minds of Congress for the 28th Amendment. And Jay, right before I turn it over to you, I want to give you an idea of the kind of people you're on the call with. You're talking with people like Catherine Tasto of Central Minnesota, who presented in front of her county commissioners in one of the most conservative counties in the state and helped pass a local resolution around the 28th Amendment with a unanimous vote. And her group plans on taking the momentum gained from Lobby Day in June back with her to start more chapters of American Promise in Minnesota. And then there's also people like Jenny Potashnik, whose APA in St. Louis just helped win a citywide local resolution in favor of the 28th Amendment. Now, these are the kind of people that we're talking to. And with that, it's my pleasure to turn it over to Jay. Jay, take it away.
Well, thank you so much for that fascinating introduction, and I'm so glad to be on the line with all of you. I really want to first express how much I appreciate what you're doing. The mission that you have at hand, the goal you have set is critical. I believe if you are successful at taking the money out of politics, everything else will be a whole lot easier. Rational policy will follow. So thank you. It's a worthy endeavor, and appreciate it. So if this is your first go-round with lobbying in Washington, I envy you, because you're in for a really a game-changing, life-altering experience when you go and you start to talk with your representatives and senators and realize what a big voice you can have in our great democracy. So what I thought I would do this evening is talk a little bit about why I think it's important to do these meetings, some mechanical things that might be helpful to you in terms of how to approach the meetings, and probably the most important thing will be talk a little bit about the mindset as to how your approach in the meeting can sort of help for a successful outcome. And then please keep in mind the real meat of this will be the Q&A afterwards, so I'm really looking forward to your questions. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is what you hope to accomplish in these meetings and what you can expect. So many of your meetings will be with members of staff. Don't be surprised if you can't see the member of Congress, in your first lobby day here, but that will come. It is extremely important to build good relationships with the staff. They are the people who actually write the policies. They're hands-on on the details of the policies, and convincing them of what you are doing is just as important as convincing the member. That said, if you do get to meet with the member of Congress, it is an extraordinary opportunity to change their hearts and minds on an issue. So, and then if you can change the mind and heart of a member of Congress, the staff will follow. So that works too. Some other things that you want to be aware of, that you don't want to let these things throw you. If you arrive for the meeting and they don't have conference space and they want to have the meeting in the hallway, don't worry. It happens all the time. It's not an indication of your priority, and it's not an insult. It's just they have very small office spaces. Another thing that can happen is you could be scheduled to meet with one person and then another person has to meet with you. It's just the way things work in Washington. People are torn in many directions, so kind of be prepared for that. One of the goals of these meetings, in my opinion, is to build a relationship and build trust with this office, with this member and this staff. If you can do that, your job will become a lot easier and you will bring them onto your side. So, and that is why these in-person meetings are so important. It's really difficult to build trust and relations without doing these in-person meetings. And you can do them in Washington, you can do them in the district, but my advice would be to look at this meeting as the first of a long series of meetings. I would not expect to go in and come out with a yes on this first meeting or your second meeting or your third meeting. This is a process that's a long game, and but I think you're all in it for that and can realize that. So what does it take to build trust? In my opinion, what builds trust is empathy. And by that I mean, can this person that you're meeting with sense that you understand their position? That is really the key to finding common ground with them. They need to know that you understand the difficulty of what you're asking. They need to know that you understand what a difficult position it is for them perhaps to step out on your issue. I work on climate change. It's a very difficult issue for some members of Congress to step out on, but they need to know that I understand that and that I'm trying to work with them and help them find a way forward. If they think you're in there and you're just pitching, selling, not thinking about their viewpoint, it's not going to go well. So how you do that, it's kind of a mindset. I think you need to think long and hard before going into a meeting what you're asking these members to do, how it's going to be received by their party, by their leadership, by their peers, by their constituents, and then have a real good grasp of that, however difficult those positions might be, because they will sense whether you have an appreciation for that or not. So that's my advice on the mindset. And it's not enough to, repeat empathic statements like, oh, I understand how you feel. That's kind of too mechanical. They need to really feel that you feel where they're coming from. Not easy to do, but if you can do that, it goes a long way. Building trust also happens by showing up. So these meetings in Washington, the follow-up, the conversations in the district, that all starts to have a cumulative effect on building trust. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the mechanics of the meeting and maybe a little bit about your preparation. Some advice that we use at CCL for preparing for meetings. So one thing we advise strongly in advance of a meeting is you assign roles. Assume you're going to have meeting teams of 3 or 4 or 5 people. So it would be very good to know before you walk into the meeting who's going to do what. For example, who's going to take notes. At CCL, we think the note-taking is really a critical job because it builds a record. If they're good notes, it can really be helpful. So who's going to take notes? Who's going to make the ask? And who's going to answer certain types of questions? These are things you could decide before going in the meeting. And like any good plan, sometimes it all goes out the window once the conversation starts. But you're much more apt to look organized and for people to be prepared if you have assigned these roles beforehand. Another thing I would advise is to try and anticipate some of the questions you're going to ask. Many of you who, if you've been working on your issue, you probably know what the common questions are. It's great to kind of have everyone know the answers to the top 5 questions, the top 10 questions. At CCL, we call them laser talks, and we've actually developed a database of scores of laser talks on every type of issue we think people can ask about our policy, and then it just helps everyone be prepared. And as your organization grows, these are things that can get people up to speed as they join later on. It's really helpful to know the committees that the member that you're meeting with is on, those particularly if he's on he or she is on a relevant committee to your issue. And it also tells you something about their areas of interest. You need to have an actionable ask, and this may not be your overarching goal. I think what's important is that you are going to state to them your goal, which is the ultimate thing you want to achieve, this amendment. But I really feel it's important that you have a tangible ask where you can say to them, okay, this is a step we'd like you to take. And it's something relatively small, incremental, doable. So I would have both an ask and a goal. I think you should start the meeting with an appreciation. This is the number one rule in CCL. A meeting with a member of Congress or a staff person has to start with an expression of appreciation. And this would be, thank you for doing something that you've done, or something that the member has done. You would be surprised how little thanks these people get. They hear lots of complaints, lots of arguments, but very little thanks. So starting with an appreciation would be really important. And then I would go from an appreciation to then stating your overarching goal, what you're trying to achieve. And then a big key is to listen. Listen, listen, listen. Elicit comments from the person you're meeting with. I find this is hard to do, but so important, and they'll appreciate it. You can ask questions like, what do you think of this goal of ours? What would your boss think? What would the member of Congress think of this? What's her approach to this type of amendment? And really try and draw them out. That's actually one of the most important things you can do, and that note taker should be writing down every comment that you can elicit. They will also appreciate that because these people are doing 5 meetings a day or more, and if everyone's talking at them, they'll really like you if you're trying to speak with them. So I would also do quick introductions of yourselves. My recommendation is that you don't let people take 4 minutes each to introduce themselves. You'll chew up the whole meeting with introductions. And so it should be very quick. If you're a constituent, really important to say that and say where you're from. Demonstrate some connection to the district. People in congressional offices really perk up when they hear that you're a constituent, so that would be really a valuable thing to do. And I would say lead with your goal and close with the ask. So that is, lead with the overarching goal and end the meeting with the ask. And if possible, that ask should come from a constituent. I was asked to comment on the leave behind material. At CCL, we like to leave behind no more than 1 page. I think it'd be great if you as an organization could have a 1-pager prepared that's very concise, not a dense amount of text, but just can be a nice leave behind reminder that the staff member could share with a member of Congress if you don't get to meet with a member. So that leave behind needs to be sort of self-explanatory if it's just left on a member's desk. Also, consider that a goal of your meeting is to get your next meeting and to make a good impression so that they want to meet with you again. We consider that a win if the first meeting leads to a second meeting, a mission accomplished if you do that. I want to leave a lot of time for questions here, so I'm going to wrap up soon and just see what's on your mind. But in closing, if you remember nothing from what I told you, just think about walking in their shoes and demonstrate that you understand this is not an easy ask. You understand the position they're in, and you're trying to help them find a way forward, not force them forward, but help them find a way forward. If they feel that from you, I know you're going to be successful in building support for this. So with that, I would like to move on into your questions and see what's on your mind.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jay. If you have a question, please press the number 1 on your keypad so I know to call on you. So press the number 1 on your keypad, and oh, great, looks like we have somebody. Okay, Travis, you are unmuted. Where are you calling in from, and what's your question?
Yes, hello, Travis, speaker, Claymont, Delaware. So I was just calling to, I wanted to say, Jay, great advice. I really appreciate it. Very thorough with how to go about going through a meeting. I've met with the legislators from my state before, rather assistants for all of them, and I got the impression, I was meeting with them on a similar issue, I got the impression that they walked away not really being interested in getting back to me, having another meeting, and I think your advice has helped a lot as far as like listening to them and being able to get another meeting and having small asks and so on. But in that context, what's the best way to turn a supporter into a champion, you would say? Because all of our people from Delaware ostensibly are in support of legislation for a 28th Amendment. So how do I really get them excited about it?
Yes. So, well, one ingredient is persistence and sticking with it. And I don't mean in a repetitive way, but continuing to show them that you can be helpful. That, if you can demonstrate to these staffers that you're trying to help them, and the way you help them will vary from office to office, but if you're trying to help them find a way to do this within their own framework, I think that would go a long way. If they're a supporter of the concept, but you're trying to get them to step up and be more proactive with you or more engaged, asking them to do things can actually ramp up their engagement. So let's say they support your concept, but they don't really know, sort of where to go from here, or they're not that engaged. Asking them to speak on one of your calls, asking the member to speak, something like that could really start to build some rapport and engagement. So those might be some things I would recommend. But frequency, if you can be useful, you can meet with these offices frequently, and that, I think, leads to engagement. And but you can't do it if you're just going in with the same information and the same ask. It's more like you need to develop fresh material, and that's a bit of an art, but that frequency can help too.
Great. Thank you so much.
I just want to say one more thing relative to that question and maybe the others, but finding common ground is really what this is all about. It is, when you talk to these members, I always ignore everything I disagree with them. I ignore it. I just let it flow past me, and I look for and seek out little bits of common ground. And so that's another way to build engagement and trust.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like we have another person with their hand up. Sam, you are unmuted. Where are you calling in from, and what's your question?
Yeah, hi there. This is Sam from Princeton, New Jersey, and I wouldn't usually do this, but I really want to push Jay to speak to something. Jay goes to, he's a full-time volunteer, goes to D.C. every week, 3 or 4 or 5 days a week except for Christmas. You're a guy from Pennsylvania, and you enrolled the first 2 Republicans on the Climate Solutions Caucus in Miami, Florida. How did you do it? What in 2 minutes, what are a couple of glimpses of what this guy from Philadelphia did to enroll 2 Miami congresspeople who were, I guess, opposed at first to jumping in on climate change? What kind of things did you do back then?
Right. So maybe a really relevant part of that is why I did that. And I zeroed in on Miami because I thought that was the part of the country that was most affected by climate change, where Republicans would first step up on the issue because salt water is flooding the streets, and it's pretty hard to deny. And so that kind of illustrates looking for the opening, like where are the openings where you can start to get some wins. And for me, it was Miami and South Florida. And the 30-second version of that story, Sam, is I just started going to Miami and trying to meet people, mayors and Chamber of Commerce leaders who I felt should be concerned about climate change. And so started to build relationships with people who I thought would be interested in climate change, and then took those people to meet with the members of Congress. And that turned out to be a pretty effective formula. It involved a lot of trips to Florida to work on that. But the last thing maybe to take away from that was getting the first Republican to break the ice and step forward on climate change. That was a big deal. And it was like the first domino, and that started this small wave of Republicans stepping up. So sometimes it's worth all the effort in the world to get that first win, because the next one will be a lot easier.
Thank you so much, Jay. Your insights are always so well received. John, you have your hand up. You're unmuted. Where are you calling in from, and what is your question?
Hello there. I'm John. I hope you're talking to this John.
Yes, this
John. Okay, thanks. Juneau, Alaska. John Sonnen up here. And I am stuck in a congressional delegation that is entrenched in the big money, and I'm not sure I could pry any of them loose. I've got one somewhat moderate Republican that has capitulated on Planned Parenthood, and that's just indication of some humanity, I guess. But for the most part, I have a real strong desire to control some of the weapons flooding our country. So all 3 of them are NRA pocketed, and I only have 3 congressional reps or delegates, 1 representative for the entire state, and then 2 senators, Murkowski and Sullivan. But I have a problem with what Jay suggests about empathy. I think I can find common ground, but I really find it difficult to turn my mind into the right perspective that allows me to ask questions and even just converse often with someone who is born of a like digital mindset, where it's all about whether I win or whether I lose, whether I gain or whether I have to pay. And for me to be empathetic with that thinking, it's difficult, to say the least. I don't know if it's possible, but it is difficult, that's for sure. I'm wondering, common ground I might be able to find if I could stick to just that point, though. See, now, if I want to spread it out it all emanates from the money and distortion of our politics. But in the climate, actually, it starts with the climate, and it gets us all thinking survivalistic instead of humanistic. But
right. So it sounds like John's question is, how do you find empathy when you're talking to people that are just basically very opposite of your own beliefs?
Yeah. So one way to start that process would be to research this member and look at what they have done, what they've said, what they've done, and see if you can find something that you appreciate, even if it's unrelated to your issue. So you may find that Senator Sullivan has done something for Alaska or for the country that you do appreciate, and that would be maybe help you to start to humanize this member of Congress and maybe appreciate them. The other thing that I often think about is that this member of Congress may have certain positions because it's reflective of their constituents. And you can often find where a member of Congress wants to do something, maybe, something I would think is the right way to go, but can't because the constituency will vote them out of office. And so that's a way, when you start to appreciate that, like in my case, a member of Congress says, I know climate change is real, I know it's a major issue, but my voters don't care about it, and they will vote me out of office if I step up on it. I then can appreciate his position. I really don't like the fact that he or she is telling me they can't work on climate change. I think that's horrible, but I can appreciate the predicament that they're in. So by trying to understand what may be keeping this member of Congress from wanting to support your issue, you can maybe break through some of that anger. It's difficult to do, but I like to think that I can meet with the most anti-climate member of Congress and have a rational conversation with them just by disregarding whatever they say that I disagree with, not arguing with it, and trying to find patches of common ground and expand from there. I had a 4-hour conversation with the head of a very conservative group that was opposing climate change once, and it was just all the classic stages of denial of climate change and opposition to doing anything about it. But we found common ground. It took 4 hours and a gallon of iced tea on a hot day once, but we did find common ground. And in the end, he said, I'll do what I can to help you. So you just have to try and manage that instinct to be angry and try and understand their predicament if you can. And, that's actually a good way to deal with people in general, even outside of Congress. But I wish you good luck, John. And if you come from Alaska to Washington, I think Senator Sullivan's rule is to meet with any Alaskan who comes to Washington. So hopefully you'll get to meet with him face-to-face. He's a pretty good guy.
Great. Incredible. Such an honor to hear from you, Jay, and thank you so much. I cannot wait to see how the insights you shared are implemented in Lobby Day. For now, we've run out of time for questions, but if we have time at the end, we will open it up for questions for you. I'm now going to pass it over to our other special guest, Sam Daly-Harris. Sam is the founder of Results and founder of Civic Courage. He led his first Lobby Day in 1984 and has been to Lobby Days every year since. He's also the author of Reclaiming Our Democracy. Hi, Sam.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you. And I just really want to reset the context for a second. We were just talking with Jay Butera, who, along with his team of many hundreds of volunteers, have gotten 39 Republicans and 39 Democrats on a House Climate Solutions Caucus. And we're going to Lobby Day on Monday, and there's only one Republican on any of these bills. So we're going to create a breakthrough. So if you don't have the Lobby Day training document in front of you and you're able to go online right now, please go to www.citizenleaders.us. So that's citizen, singular, leaders, plural, .us. And if you get to that website, you can go to the top of the page and click on Lobby Day. And on the Lobby Day page, just above the words, let's do it, it's really large letters, let's do it, click here to download our Lobby Day training material. So if you can't go online right now, don't worry about it. We'll send this document to everyone who registered for tonight's call. I'm assuming we'll get it out by tomorrow, Friday at the latest. So, as Boy said, if you're in an APA going to Lobby Day June 25th, make sure that she or Azer know who in your APA is the liaison setting up the meetings with each U.S. rep and each U.S. senator with whom you're going to be meeting. If you're not in an APA, an American Promise Association, and you are going to Lobby Day, make sure you contact Azer or Waboy and see if someone is already setting up the meetings with your representative and senators. And if not, ask if you can be the liaison setting up those meetings. Now, what I hope you got out of our time with Jay was some insight into this question. And I think you did. Who do I have to be, and what do I have to do with my member of Congress or their staff to develop a relationship that can lead to a breakthrough for this movement, especially with Republicans? My section will focus on the agenda for the meeting. Jay frankly went over that, but I'm going to go over what's in the Lobby Day document. Again, the goal for your meetings, I'm kind of repeating Jay in some of this, is to start or continue building a deep, trusted relationship with your member of Congress or their staff. So the sample meeting outline is at the bottom of page 5. So if you have the Lobby Day training doc in front of you, go to the bottom of page 5 and follow along. And if you don't worry about it. We can go back. So the first part, as Jay said, was thank yous. So introduce yourself briefly, name, city, and no more than a sentence about what value or experience pulls you to work for a government run by people, not money. As he said, you could eat away the whole meeting with long-winded introductions. The second, and Jay mentioned it, is do some research to find out what you could thank your rep or senator for in the meeting, or thank the aide for something your rep or senator did. Maybe they do some great thing on fighting homelessness. It doesn't have to be something related specifically to overturning Citizens United. Ask how much time they have to meet with you. In other words, you might know that the meeting starts at 10 o'clock and you have 15 minutes, but you go to the office and the meeting starts at 10 after 10, and you ask, well, how much time do you have? Because you want to know if they say 5 minutes, then you want to squeeze in much more in 5 minutes. Frankly, if they say 5 minutes, sometimes they'll keep you for 30 if the meeting's going really well. And ask a question that will allow the member or the aide to introduce themselves more fully. This really helps establish a connection. For example, what was your vision for entering politics? The second thing is to briefly outline our issue using the laser talk. Jay mentioned laser talks, and we'll have those available for sure. And the Lobby Day Ask. And I'm going to go over the Lobby Day Ask at the end. I'm just going to do the agenda first and the Lobby Day Ask after a little Q&A. And when you've told them what bills or resolutions you'd like them to co-sponsor, share your experience and emphasize why the bill's purpose and provisions are compelling to you. And then welcome feedback, questions, comments, listening from the member of Congress or their staff regarding the issue or the bill. If you're meeting with a Republican and they seem resistant to the issue, ask some open-ended questions like this. And Jay was referring to that. What are your thoughts on the current campaign finance system? Or is the current campaign finance system all good? Or are there improvements you could see be made? Or what, if any, changes would you make to improve the system? You really want to hear where they're coming from. And then the next item is that you repeat the asks, the requests, and I'll go over those later, and wrap up. Set up a time for follow-up to learn their decision if they can't give you the answer right then and there. With contact info, do you need to contact the aide? What's their email address? And expected response times. Get back to me in a week. I'll have an answer for you. Thank you for their time and attention, and then celebrate the action that you've taken. Now, before I go over the Lobby Day ask, let's take one or two questions now on this agenda part. And if there aren't any at first, I actually have some comments on some of the requests, questions that were asked earlier. So, well, boy, can you see if there's a question or two, mostly on this agenda, but it couldn't be anything else that's related to Lobby Day. And let's see if we've got anyone.
Sure. So if you have a question, please press the number 1 on your keypad so I know to call on you, and shout out your name and where you're calling in from. Okay, looks like we have Claire. Claire, you are unmuted. Where you're calling in from and what's your question?
Claire's
Karen?
muted still?
I'm sorry, Karen. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Karen.
No.
Karen, you're unmuted. Where are you calling in from and what's your question? Karen Galloway?
Yes, go ahead.
All right.
What is Karen there?
I don't think so. We're going to move on. Okay, looks like Marie has her hand up. You're unmuted. Where are you calling in from and what's your question? Marie, you are unmuted.
Now, she could be muted at her end.
Yes, I was muted at my end, and I had to.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry.
Marie, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Great, go for it.
My question is, if we do have a situation where they're a little delayed getting started with us, and they say, well, I really only have 5 minutes. How should we plan in advance that if the answer is we have much less time for our meeting than we expected, how we're going to trim down the agenda to be able to get to the issue and get to the ask?
Sure. We don't need. I think 5 is a bit of a stretch. I didn't mean quite 5. I know they're going to give you 10 or 15 or something like that. But yeah, we'll need to know what's our bottom lines. And in some sense, the bottom line is that they know who's in the room very briefly. Like, I'm a constituent, I'm not. Maybe we'll have someone with your group who might not be too. We'll want to make our ask and hear from them, but also share why this matters to me. Why did I come to D.C.? Why did I pay for a hotel room or whatever? What is it that moves me to do this work? And of course, we want to listen to them. And if it's someone who's quite resistant, then a more open-ended question, as we discussed. But I don't think 5 minutes is as short it'll be, but it might be. We thought we were getting 30, and we ended up with 15. That might be a little more likely.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have another person with their hand up. Nancy, you are unmuted. Where are you calling in from, and what's your question?
Hi, my name is Nancy Morgan. I'm calling in from Northern Virginia. And my question is basically, I'm a member of Results, so we've done a lot of lobbying on the Hill. And I'm new to American Promise, and we're setting up the appointments with our congressman. The question that I was looking over the way you set up appointments, can we just contact the aides that we know, the legislative assistants and aides that we know through results, or should
So let me ask this question. Are you going to the results conference in July, or are you also going to the American Promise conference at the end of June?
I'm going to both.
Both, fabulous. Okay, so here's the deal. You should communicate with Waboy, and Waboy, I think I'm going to ask you to give your email in just a second, and let her know the name of the rep, or maybe you're going with a friend who touches a different Virginia rep, and the name of the two senators, and she will let you know that, no, we don't have any, or yeah, we already have meetings set up, we'll connect you with them, or no, we don't. Why don't you be the person who sets those up? So 1 second. Waboy, would you give your email once more?
Yes, I believe that Nancy already has my email.
Oh, okay.
Well,
give it anyone for someone else. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. So for those that don't know, my email is WAM as in mom, B as in boy, U as in umbrella, IG at AmericanPromise.net. So that's WAMBUIG at AmericanPromise.net. And if you are scheduling meetings with your legislators, or you're wondering if somebody already has, this is the perfect opportunity to email me, and I will point you in the right direction.
Yes, and it's best to write first and schedule after you've communicated with a boy, rather than schedule first and then let them know, because there might be someone else already doing it. Nancy, is that fine?
Oh, Nancy's on mute.
I've already I've already talked to LaVoy, and I've been asked to set up the appointment.
Perfect.
Which is fine, but I just don't know whether I should go through my regular the legislative aides that I know through results. Does it matter?
Well, here's the thing. Yeah, well, typically you wouldn't set up the meeting with the legislative aide. You'd go to the scheduler and you'd figure out who the scheduler is for Senator Kane or Warner kind of thing. Yeah, and you'd want to let the scheduler know that you aren't meeting on global or domestic poverty. You're meeting on money and politics and Citizens United. So if the aide is in the room, it's the correct aide, because it's the correct assignment. Well, boy, let me keep going, and then we'll open up for questions in a moment, if it's okay, because I want to say something about the Lobby Day asks. You don't have to get all of this down, because we're going to have more training and materials leading up to the conference, and during the NCLC itself, I'll lead a whole training session, and the requests or asks will be different for House Democrats than they are for House Republicans, different for Senate Democrats than they are for Senate Republicans, and there are primary asks or main asks and secondary asks. And here are the Lobby Day asks, and quite frankly, the House and Senate are quite same, except for the bill numbers are different. So I'm going to make this brief for more room for questions. If you're meeting with a House Democrat, the primary ask is that they co-sponsor HJ Res 48 and HJ Res 31, and many of them already have. So secondary asks are, first of all, we want to thank them, and if they're already a co-sponsor, we'll ask if they would write a letter to the editor or op-ed to educate their constituents on the issue. I forget who it was from Delaware, was how do we move them up the champion scale, where, well, if they're already a co-sponsor, maybe they partner with you in writing an op-ed in one of the local papers on this issue as a next step for them, or participate in a briefing or a town hall meeting back in the district on our issue. Another secondary ask is that they or their staff go to a briefing the day after Lobby Day, June 26th, done by John Pudner and Jeff Clements. Now, we're still working to set that up, but we think we'll have that. And then the last secondary ask is, if you're meeting with the aide, we'll ask their help in getting a meeting with the member of Congress back home. Now, the Senate Democrat asks are the same, except for the bill is SJ Res 8, not the HJ Res. Now, if you're meeting with a House Republican, and this is important because then the Senate Republican will be about the same, and I'm going to skip them. House Republican, the primary ask will be that they be a lead sponsor or an initial sponsor on a House Republican resolution on this issue. Now, we're going to have some draft language that you can hand over to them, and we're trying to figure out ways to make it easy for Republicans to finally get involved. The secondary asks are many of them the same. Attend a briefing by John Pudner and Jeff Clements the next day after Lobby Day. And if you're meeting with an aide, we'll ask their help in getting a meeting with the member of Congress, or if it's the Senate side, with the senator back home. Now, I'm not going to go over the Senate asks because they're essentially the same, including a Senate Republican resolution, because I want to open it up for questions and see if we can get to any additional questions that people might have.
Yes. So if you would like to ask a question, again, just hit the number 1 on your keypad so I know to call on you, and you will be unmuted. And be sure to shout out your name and where you're calling in from. All right. Looks like we have Casey. Casey, you are unmuted. Where are you calling in from, and what's your question?
I'm calling from Boston, Massachusetts.
Great.
Go ahead.
My question is actually kind of mixed. I am a ADA advocate, and I'm working on trying to become a lobbyist in this particular matter, because in our state, the inclusion of handicapped individuals is not very fair, it's very poor. And the benefit that the handicapped people get in our state is pretty poor, especially in housing. When someone becomes handicapped, it's difficult, especially in New England. And the issue that we have here is to give people that are disabled the same benefits that you will give with people with children. And I also represent elderly and disabled. The benefits are not there. And I've been trying I went to some of the state senators to present this difficulty that people with disability have. And there's thousands, especially in our state. It's very expensive.
Okay, so I get the gist of your question. And you said you're trying to learn to be a lobbyist or an advocate on disability issues, and that's great. And I recommend, if you're going to Lobby Day or you can go to Lobby Day, you will get a lot of experience and you will learn a lot from being at Lobby Day. I just ask that you be respectful and be on point with this issue. So the issue that we're going in on is money in politics and overturning Citizens United. You can learn to lobby from this meeting and take it back with you to the issue you're most focused on. I think there could be a win-win there for you there if you're able to do that. Let's see if there's another question.
Sure. David, you are unmuted. Where are you calling in from, and what is your question?
I'm calling in from Massachusetts, and there are groups that are lobbying for this amendment, but different groups have different language that they prefer. And the question is, what do we do if we're talking to a member or his staff, and we're told that our ask with respect to language conflicts with another ask that they got from a group that's allegedly an ally of ours, but wants different language in the bill?
Yeah, so here's the deal. I think it won't matter, actually. I think I'll tell you what the bigger problem will be. When I mean don't matter is that if there are two bills, the rep or the senator can co-sponsor both, and they don't have to co-sponsor one and fight the other. So I don't think that will be a very big problem. I think the big problem will be to get any Republican on any language, period. That's the big challenge that this movement faces, and that's why we spend a lot of time trying to find ways to open that door. So I don't think the resistance will be, I like this language, not that language. I think the resistance will be, A, on the conservative side, which we want to have a breakthrough on, and quite frankly, just the need for this issue to be more of a priority issue through our letters to the editor, through our meetings with members of Congress, through our speaking in our communities, et cetera. Can we go to one last question that maybe I could do quickly a response to?
Sure. Marie, you have another question. Please shout out your name. You don't know your name, but rather where you're calling in from and what your question is.
Hi, this is Marie from Cherry Hill again. My question is about one of our congressional districts that we cover has a Republican congressperson who's been has had some social media interactions that have been very negative. And the two people that we have from his congressional district, if we were to apply for a meeting under their names, we believe that just by recognition of their name, they may not give the meeting. So my question is how to go about that. Should one of us from outside of the district apply, try to make the application for the meeting?
Well, here's the question. Hold on. Here's the question. Are these two folks going to the meeting? Is that part of the deal?
One of them is, yes.
Great. Fabulous. Now, the next question is, what are they committed to? Are they committed to a breakthrough, or are they committed to being right about how much of a jerk this person is or isn't, kind of thing?
So our member is fine. She's very interested in making a breakthrough.
Oh, great. So,
his staff has actually been very vindictive on social media, and they have blocked people on social media and so on. And we believe that if they see her name, if she's the one who applies for the meeting, even in Washington, that they won't even set up the meeting. Right.
Okay. Well, so the bottom line is you're way, way, way more likely to get a meeting with a constituent requesting it. It could even be a constituent who is not going to D.C., but is asking for an aide to meet with one of or a few of her friends who are going to D.C. I think it would be better if a constituent set it up, frankly, not one that's been blackballed or whatever. So does that make sense to you? I mean, you could try that you, Marie, set up the appointment, and they say, well, no, you're not a constituent. If you can get a constituent to make the request, we'll set it up. You'll find out. I don't know what their policy is going to be. The bottom line is this. The bottom line is that people really come from a relationship and a breakthrough. And if that's where people are coming from, that'll make for really great meetings. So thank you, everyone. I'm very excited about these calls over these. This is number 3 of these training calls, and I think they're going to add up to a great first lobby day. Citizens Climate Lobby, who Jay works with, had 25 people at their first lobby day in 2010, and they only let the first 1,000 go to the Hill last year. And so I'm sure we'll beat their 25 big time and have a real blast doing it. Thank you, everyone, and back to a boy.
Thanks, Sam. Sorry, 1 second. All right, and a huge part of my work and the other Citizen Empowerment Coordinator, Azra Cole, are going to be doing leading up to Lobby Day is connecting people who live closer together. And as I mentioned earlier, if you already have a meeting scheduled for Lobby Day and you haven't let us know about it, please let me know. Send me the time, location, and the member of Congress and or their aide, if that's who you're meeting with. And send me that by email, and I'll loop folks in as appropriate. Again, my email is wambuig@americanpromise.net. And if you're not in an APA and you want to set up a meeting with your representative or senator, just write me first and let me know the meeting you want to set up, and I'll let you know if somebody else is already setting up that meeting, or if you can be the liaison and you can go ahead and set it up. Again, my email is wambuig@americanpromise.net. And again, I want to encourage everybody to go to the NCLC website, which is citizenleaders.us, where you can learn more about the conference and register for it. Thank you all so much for another great call. Thank you, Jay and Sam, for bestowing on us a little bit more knowledge, and I know we're going to hit it out of the park on June 25th. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good night. I'm going to put everybody off mute so that we can say goodbye. Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Have a good night,
everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.